All right, everybody. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite small but mighty WordPress theme development tips. This is going to be a simple way that you can make sure changes to your CSS and JavaScript files are showing up instantly when you're enqueuing them in your theme and you're making changes to them locally. And so this technique will show you how to do that real fast. Let's take a minute to recap the problem that we're going to be solving here. In a WordPress theme, you'll have at some point a call to WP enqueue script or WP enqueue style inside a callback for the action WP enqueue scripts. This is what you're using to add a CSS or JavaScript file to your site. Sometimes, though, you make changes to those files and the changes aren't reflected right away. Part of the reason why is because your browser looks at the URL of that file and says, oh, this is the same thing that I just asked for. So it loads a version from the cache instead of requesting the latest version of the file. Now, there is a mechanism for WordPress enqueues called a version that you can use. So you can say, like, this is a different version of the file, and that will allow the URL to be different. And that can be used to signal to the browser, hey, this is a different URL because it has this different version parameter on the end, and now give me the latest one. So if we look here at this example HTML, like I'm doing a view source on this local site, I have this CSS file that I've enqueued here, learn wptd-style-css. And right here, we can see it has a version 6.3, which is the version of WordPress on this local installation. Now that's not very helpful though, because if I change the contents of this file, the version would still be the same. So that doesn't help either. And you could go in and you could literally just set it to 6.4, 6.3 and change that each time, which some people do, but that's pretty exhausting and terrible. If only there was a way that we could have this automatically change each time. Thankfully, there is. And the solution comes to us in the form of our friend FileMTime. So if we take a look at this PHP function in the PHP manual, FileMTime gets the file modification time for a particular file. So you say, what is the time in seconds, like the timestamp that this thing was last changed? And so you're asking the file, when were you last modified, and then using that time value as the version. This is pretty awesome because it means that every time the file actually gets changed, like you resave it and its contents have changed, the version will automatically be different. And then you'll have a different version in the URL and the browser will think it's a new asset, and bada bing, you have yourself a cache busted file. So how do we actually do this? Let's take a look at some code now in my enqueues file here. Blow this up a little bit in size. I have these calls for WP enqueue style and WP enqueue script. They currently have no versions at all, as well as no dependencies and a few other things. So what I would need to do is I'm going to need to start by adding in a version parameter. So here, this is the dependencies, which is an empty value or false or whatever. And then here we're going to say FileMTime. And then inside FileMTime, we need to provide a on-disk path to the file. So not a URI, but the actual file on the disk. So to do that, we're going to be using get template directory. If you're using a child theme, arguably, you probably would want to use get style sheet directory. This is just a standalone theme, so that's the appropriate thing to use. And then here, I already have this variable called front-end styles path, which is right up here. And so this is the path from the root of my theme to that built file, frontend.css, etc. So here, I'll go ahead and finish this and close that in quotes and then provide that last quote. So now I have this function, which will get the modified file timestamp for whatever file is at this path in the end. So for this frontend.css file. Now I can do the exact same thing down here by replacing this. Like so, I'll just type it out again. We have FileMTime, and then we say get template directory. And then here I'll use the front-end scripts path because that's a script instead of the style sheet. And there we go. One thing to note about this current implementation that I've done here is that file mtime will throw a PHP warning if the file doesn't exist. You have basically two ways you can handle this. You can do some type of conditional check before using this value, using a thing like file exists, or you can just put an @ symbol right before file mtime, which is actually what I'm doing down here as well, and this will go ahead and suppress the warning. I'm doing this because the only reason that warning will ever come up is if the file's not there. The only reason the file wouldn't be there is if I forgot to build it or some other thing that would be an obvious mistake or whatever. So it's like, I don't need to really have PHP tell me about that. I'd rather it just silently, gracefully fail or not do anything, which is what WordPress would by default do. So this allows it to kind of emulate the WordPress behavior a little bit more closely while still giving us that convenience. So if we look back at the source now for this file, like looking at that same CSS file, you can see how we have this different version. It's this integer value here, which is just the number, like the timestamp in seconds. So if I change that file again, that value will increment automatically based on the modified file timestamp. And now the browser will see it as a new asset. I hope you found this helpful. This is a tip that I've used for years and something that I picked up from a blog article a long time ago, but a lot of people I've met don't really seem to know about it. So I would really encourage you to give this a try. It's like a 2-second way that you can solve this problem on just about any WordPress build. You can leverage this whether you're doing like plugin assets or theme assets or any number of things. It's a fantastic technique, and I hope that it helps you. Be sure to like this video, comment, and tell me a little bit more if you have any questions or anything. I'd love to help. And be sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos about WordPress development.